The spread of internet access needs no introduction. It has facilitated worldwide trade and helped millions of small businesses and startups grow faster than they could imagine. However, one of the biggest problems a business could face is handling payments, something that's absolutely crucial to their functioning. Not too long ago, handling payments was clunky and complicated for someone just starting out to set up on their own. It involved ensuring safe payments, credit card handling, invoicing, and all this required infrastructure and maximum security. It often took weeks to set up a payment system, taking people's focus away from their real product. However, all that changed during the start of the previous decade. This is the story of how two brothers set out to revolutionize the internet payments industry and built one of the fastest growing companies that simplified transactions for everyone. This is the story of Stripe. Welcome to Business Hub. Please be sure to smash that like button to help out my small but growing channel. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps me out a lot. Brothers John and Patrick Collison were born in Ireland to microbiologist Lily and engineer Dennis Collison. Both their parents were entrepreneurs, so the spirit was always with them growing up. They grew up in a remote village called Dromineer in Ireland, a place far away from any city life. However, the brothers still picked up technical inclination from a very young age. They were fascinated by maths and physics. By their early teens, they had 9 computers at home and were paying €100 a month for a satellite broadband link via Germany. At the age of 16, Patrick created a programming language called Chroma that won him the Young Scientist and Technology exhibition. Later in his life, Collison attributed the success of his company to his win in the exhibition. In 2007, Patrick set up a software company called Shupper with his brother John, and later moved that to Silicon Valley, where they caught the eye of startup accelerator Y Combinator. Soon after, they joined Harjeet and Kulveer Tagar to rebrand Shupper to Automatic. Less than a year later, Collison, aged 19, and his brother, aged 17, sold Automatic to Canadian company Live Current Media, becoming overnight millionaires. By this time, Patrick was in MIT, and John had just been accepted to Harvard, so they went their separate ways, but were constantly discussing new ideas and things they could build to fix problems they faced as developers. The inspiration came when Patrick, who was working on a few side projects, kept complaining about how difficult it was to accept payments on the web. Y Combinator founder Paul Graham talks about this in his article called Schlep Blindness, where he says, "The most striking example I know of Schlep blindness is Stripe, or rather Stripe's idea. For over a decade, every hacker who'd ever had to process payments online knew how painful the experience was. Thousands of people must have known about this problem, and yet when they started startups, they decided to build recipe sites or aggregators for local events. Why? Why work on problems few care much about and no one will pay for when you could fix one of the most important components of the world's infrastructure?" Because Schlep blindness prevented people from even considering the idea of fixing payments. Probably no one who applied to Y Combinator to work on a recipe site began by asking, should we fix payments or build a recipe site? And chose the recipe site. Though the idea of fixing payments was right there in plain sight, they never saw it because their unconscious mind shrank from the complications involved. Stripe's pitch was simple, yet ingenious. Why let developers spend weeks figuring out payments when you could provide a service that lets them do it in hours? The two quickly developed a simple solution, and within 2 weeks they had processed their first transaction. Their first transactions were with a Y Combinator company called 280 North. Eventually, its founder Ross Boucher, who was their first customer, would join Stripe as one of the first employees. Over the next 6 months, they showed it to friends, watched people interact with it, and iterated as fast as they could. In the beginning, they weren't sure how big the market was or whether they could accomplish their goal of addressing issues like fraud and non-US payments in a user-friendly way. They originally partnered with a payments company, but quickly realized that the only way to control the entire experience was to control all aspects of the process. That's when they brought everything in-house. By the fall of 2010, Stripe had become their full-time jobs. Both Patrick and John had dropped out of Ivy League colleges to work on Stripe. They thought about bootstrapping it, as they had to at that point, but soon realized that as a payment startup, they would need the kind of institutional credibility that only a top-notch investor could provide. According to them, they didn't look great on paper. Their first funding came through Y Combinator. Patrick knew Paul Graham through his involvement with Lisp and Automatic, and once they told him about what they were doing, he offered to fund it. Stripe didn't have to go through the usual YC route, they were directly in. Shortly after, they met with Peter Thiel, who offered his insights in the fintech world and his learnings from PayPal, and offered to invest. Stripe received a $2 million investment from venture capitalist Peter Thiel, Sequoia Capital, and Andreessen Horowitz, and launched publicly in September 2011 after an extensive private beta. They soon rebranded from their initial name of Dev Payments to Stripe, and thus officially began the journey of a company which at the time of making this video is the highest valued private company in the world. Today, Stripe is the financial engine for more than 100,000 businesses. It stores key financial information such as credit card numbers, deals with fraud, and adds support for new services such as Apple Pay as they arise. Stripe charges a 2.9% fee on credit card payments in exchange for its services, though the fee can be lowered with higher volumes. Stripe won't disclose the number of transactions it processes, but analysts estimate it's getting close to handling $50 billion in commerce annually, which would translate to about $1.5 billion in revenue. Behind that code, the company has done all the hard work of integrating all the different and complex pieces needed to make payments work both in countries and across borders. Over the years, the company has built out a bigger platform around that, a suite of services to position itself as a one-stop shop, not just for helping businesses run all of the commercial aspects of their operations, including incorporation, managing fraud, managing cash flow, and more. Its customers include firms such as Amazon, Uber, DoorDash, Booking.com, Salesforce, Zoom, Slack, Shopify, Peloton, and several others across verticals such as e-commerce and retail, SaaS, and more. On the 15th of March 2021, the company closed in on another $600 million at a valuation of $95 billion. Stripe said it will use the funding to expand its business in Europe, with a focus on its European HQ, and also to beef up its global payments and treasury network. COVID pushing a lot of businesses to go online has been a blessing for Stripe, which now powers most of these payments. The valuation is expected to further shoot up if and when Stripe decides to go public, with rumors of an IPO in 2021 itself. Stripe stands today as one of the best examples of startup success due to one main factor. They solved a pain point. Payments were a major issue for most developers and companies, and Stripe offered a simple yet elegant solution that shot them up from the startup ladder. Stripe started out as a simple 7-line of code that any developer could plug into their site for payments, and today they raise over 7-figure digit investments as one of the most successful startups of all time.